What makes a good horror movie? Is it the constant rise in tension, massive amounts of gore, or unrealistic monsters? Well, kinda. Because although all of those things contribute to a great horror movie, one thing excels at making a great horror film, and that is its simplicity. And in today's video, we're going to be breaking down how 3 horror movies used simplicity to instantly become iconic classics. The first thing to talk about is the simplicity of the plot. The biggest thing all 3 of these plots all have in common is that they're so simple, and they all do this for one very important reason, which is to seem realistic and believable. Now we can see this for Halloween as it's just a mentally insane man who escapes from a mental hospital and tries to kill a babysitter. Similarly, Terrifier is about an insane clown trying to hunt down and kill 2 random girls and anyone who tries to stop him. Now, real
Random
quick disclaimer,
disclaimer.
I know that technically Micheal and Art are supernatural, and I know that in the end of the first Halloween, how Micheal gets shot and then gets back up, that's supposed to be his powers, but that could easily be placed with he's wearing a bulletproof vest or something like that. And also for Art, in the 2 movies we're going to be talking about today, he's not really supernatural yet, that's more in the later movies. But anyway, back to the video. So yeah, and the third movie is Creep, which is arguably the most simple, as it's just an insane man who lures a filmmaker into shooting his own death. Now, since all these movies have such simple and seemingly common, not over the top plots, it allows for them to do one of the most important things in a horror movie, which is make the story realistic and believable. And because the plots are so easy to follow and pick up on, although it may appear slow and predictable, it draws you in from each of the starts of the movies and makes everything appear as real, which also allows for tension to build throughout and also makes you feel as though you're in the movie and experiencing everything with the characters. The next thing to talk about is simplicity of the budget. For each of these movies, budget plays a key role, as it's one of the sole reasons these movies are not too over the top and crazy, and this allows for the viewer to focus clearly on the real goal of the films. For all 3 of the movies, the goal is somewhat similar, as they all are trying to build tension, yet they all do it in different ways. Halloween used its small budget to focus on the quality of the film rather than the shock value, and it used most of its budget on a camera to make the film appear better, as well as putting a lot of the money into the soundtrack of the film, as it didn't need major special effects to create tension. And even Michael's mask that he wears was just a cheap modified Halloween mask that ironically created one of the biggest symbols and horror icons of all of movie history, which is exactly what Terrifier wanted to do as well. So before the first Terrifier was even made, Damien Leone felt there was no big iconic horror character for the 2010s, and that in order for the genre to actually survive, it needed another Jason, Freddy, or Michael, which led him to create Art. Now before I go any further, there's a great video that explains this in detail by Tray Clancy, and I'll put that in the description, but I'm pretty much just going to summarize it. So when Damien shot the first film, Terrifier starring Art, it had no big budget, and it really wasn't successful at first. Yet, although the low budget of the short film, Jesse Baggett, okay, that sounds wrong. Alright, I think it's Jesse Bagot. If it's not, whatever. But anyway, Bagot saw potential in Damien and the character of Art, giving him All Hallows Eve, which gave some exposure and feedback to the character. And with the high praise of the character, Damien knew he could create a great horror icon, despite how much funding he had, leading him to give Art his own feature film, Terrifier 1, and this would serve as most people's first introduction to the character of Art. And although most of the movie looks like a movie with a $35,000 budget, one big thing leaves you questioning how they even made the movie in the first place, which is the gore. Now, because everything else in the movie seems pretty lackluster, no offense to like the actors and people who worked on the movie, but the gore is able to shine through and become the sole symbol of the movie, taking its toll on the audience, and it makes you question how they make it look so real with such a small budget, which was really the whole point of not only the whole movie, but what Damien used the budget on, as he was not trying to just put out another bad horror movie. It was truly to create an icon and do it in a very specific way that left people remembering and pretty much emotionally scarred from everything they have watched. And I mean, if you've seen these movies, you know how really interesting they can be, which is exactly the goal of the movie, despite the simple and low budget. The third movie, and most simple in terms of budget, is Creep, which had a small budget of $500 and was just a fun film project that wasn't supposed to be taken too seriously. However, despite the low budget of the movie, Creep is able to make you feel just as, if not more uncomfortable than any other horror movie, as there are only two main characters, the cameraman and Joseph, and the whole movie is shot as a budget-friendly found footage movie, which leads us to feel like we're experiencing everything with Aaron, which allows for constant tension to build through Joseph's eerie and creepy personality. And although the movie doesn't use special effects to get the point across, it feels very real and live, just based on how it's shot and how realistic it appears due to its small cast and lack of over the topness. And because this movie seems so real and believable, it feels like it could happen to anyone, especially the viewer. What really ties all these movies together, and arguably what makes them the most effective, is how simple they all present fear. And to do that, we're going to dive into three specific scenes from each of the movies. In Halloween, the fear doesn't come from jump scares or monsters. It comes from a guy just standing across the street, watching you. Throughout the movie, every time Michael appears to be stalking Laurie, there are multiple key factors that make the tension rise. The first key factor is the music. Every time Michael is on screen, there is some sort of music that plays, and it's placed simply to add tension and suspense to the scene. And although simple, it is one of the biggest elements of the whole movie. Another key that makes these scenes from Halloween so eerie is whenever Laurie seems to see Michael, she is the only one to see him, and right after she does, he's gone in nearly seconds. And it's almost like Laurie cannot separate reality from hallucinations, and gives the view of the idea that maybe Michael isn't actually real, and she's just imagining him, which is why she continuously calls him the boogeyman throughout the movie, and is so scared when she actually sees him. Another factor, and possibly one of the biggest, is how Michael stands. The pose he holds is always creepy, no matter if he was wearing a mask or not. His idle still stance creates possibly the greatest tension of the scene, and only adds to Michael's character and the tone of the whole movie. A movie that presents tension similarly is Terrifier in the pizza place scene. Just after seeing Art across the street, two drunk girls are sitting in a pizza shop, trying to sober up so that they can drive home. And right from the start, one girl dislikes Art when he walks in and finds him creepy, while the other seems to not even care and find him somewhat charming. As Art sits down, it's interesting to note that he continuously holds eye contact with Tara, and throughout this scene will try many ways to torment her. It's important to note here as well that so far in the scene,
Look at your boyfriend.
there's only been music from the pizza place, as well as the owner yells out from the back, almost breaking the initial tension and creepiness of the scene. Yet right after this, we get a shot of Tara's face and Art's face, and they both look serious, and it almost looks like Art may be plotting to kill her. And this is when the dark music begins to play, and like in Halloween, drowns out almost everything else in the scene. Yet Leone then does almost a 180, as Art then smiles, which makes him seem almost friendly, but obviously Tara doesn't think so, and is still creeped out. then comes one of the most interesting ways to build tension, as Art begins to make funny faces, and the scene almost loses all its fear, replacing it with comical value. Yet the dark music still plays, as for the girl, she's beginning to get more and more freaked out, and it almost is like because we laugh at Art and find the situation funny, like he does, Tara is the only one feeling the tension and the only one actually in fear during this scene. And now that since we've been placed in both characters' minds, Leone is able to present the idea that what if we were placed in the person's mind who's causing the tension, which is Art? And if we call back to the goal of the movie, that was the whole point from the start. As you're not trying to root for the two girls to make it out, because from the start of the movie, they're pretty much sitting ducks and are pretty much dead already. And as we see the tension in the scene build, we begin to understand and see that Art isn't like most killers. He's friendly and almost charming, which is exactly what gives him his uniqueness and overall character. The tension then peaks when the more playful friend tries to take a selfie with Art, and when she sits with him, she hits his own hat against his face. But Art doesn't react to her. He still stares past at Tara, almost like he chose her from the start of the movie. And it's not a question of how is she gonna make it out. It's a question of how is Art gonna kill her. The final scene that we're gonna be taking a look at is from Creep. And just for a little context, Aaron, the cameraman, has just met Joseph, probably for not even an hour yet, and right when Aaron walks into the bathroom, he walks in on Joseph undressing. Now, the fact that Aaron, who is holding the camera, barges in on Joseph makes the audience feel almost like they are invading into Joseph's privacy, making you feel like you almost made a slip up or a mistake. Yet, that's right when Joseph says,
"We're gonna go a lot deeper places than this."
Now, walking in on someone is a pretty normal occurrence. You know, it happens accidentally sometimes, but someone saying what Joseph said would make anyone feel eerie and creeped out, exactly like Aaron did, and that marks the beginning of the bathtub scene. Instantly, the first thing you can notice about this scene is, unlike Terrifier and Halloween, there is no music. It's almost dead silent, and
Just
the
checking who
fact
you
that
are.
the Duplass brothers chose this decision only makes the conversation feel more authentic and awkward, leaving the audience questioning what they even got themselves into. While Aaron, the cameraman, does the exact same thing, using the camera as a connection to everything the audience feels and everything he feels, as we both experience this disturbing scene. Joseph then gives a demonstration on a tubby to his unborn child, and it seems wholesome and sweet at first, until Joseph actually starts pretending he is holding a child and begins playing with him. And during this, similar to Aaron, we begin to question Joseph's sanity. Yet, right when we do, Joseph lays down and begins to hold his unborn child, almost giving the audience and Aaron a strange sense of sympathy for Joseph, who's pretending to be a dying father, who's just trying to connect with his unborn son. Yet again, right when we do feel some sense of sympathy, like Joseph, we snap back into reality, and Joseph begins discussing his growing sickness and begins to question the value of his life, calling it sad and stating, I could just end it right now. And right after that is a long pause of dead silence. Joseph then attempts to drown himself, and as he's under the water, the silence only gets more eerie, which leads Aaron to call out for Joseph, who is now fully submerged in the water. And Aaron calling out for Joseph obviously is just his will to try to save a life, but it's also his will to try to break this awkward tension. We then get a long shot of Joseph under the water, and along with Aaron, we begin to question everything once again. And with all these things building up, Joseph bursts out of the water, scaring not only Aaron, but making the audience feel the same level of fear and confusion, despite the simplicity of the execution. Another quick thing I just wanted to mention about this scene is it's really interesting once you rewatch the movie and you know that everything Joseph said about his unborn child and him being sick is all fake. It's really interesting to see this scene again, as it really shows how Joseph is truly insane, because now he's made up an unborn child and is having an imaginary bath with them. But yeah, I just thought that was a cool detail. So anyway, that's gonna wrap up our video today, guys. I hope you liked it. If you didn't, let me know in the comments. I always like reading comments. So yeah, if you liked it, also go in the comments and write that too. But yeah, please like and subscribe. That'll help support me and stuff. Thanks for watching this far. This has been one of the longer videos, so thanks if you made it this far. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one, I guess.